Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. When the Prophet ﷺ would return from a journey or a travel, he would stop just before reaching the city of Medina, and he would take camp. And he would be so close to the city that the people in the city can see that a caravan has arrived. But he wouldn't enter the city. Now, this is very strange. I mean, they've been traveling, going through terrain, they're missing their families. Why would the Prophet ﷺ stop just before reaching the city, when he could reach the city within, maybe an hour? And, the Prophet ﷺ is so amazing. He would do that so that the people in the city know that their family members have arrived, so that the family can prepare the home, the wife can prepare herself, because back in the day there aren't showers. People would have to go in the wilderness to take a shower or to use the bathroom. And so a woman probably wasn't taking care of herself as she would when in the presence of her husband. And the kids maybe the same thing. Or maybe she's staying with her family and the home doesn't have anything in it. So he would camp outside of the city so that the family of the members of the travelers get ready to welcome back their family member. This is so beautiful. Now in our times today we have phones and all of that, so no need to rent a hotel before going home. But the wisdom here is that it helps build a stable family. The last thing a wife would want is for her husband to enter upon her after traveling for several weeks or maybe several months, to see her that her hair is frizzy and that she hasn't taken a shower in a few days, and he's kind of discomforted or agitated by her physical appearance or something like that, and that might harm the relationship. But to be ready. And so look at how such a strange sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has such a large wisdom behind it. And we can use this to take this message from Islam, that Islam has come to make stable families. We live in the West, in the 21st century, where the challenges are numerous. In fact, it's almost limitless, the amount of challenges and hurdles that families have to deal with. And it seems like it's becoming increasingly difficult to really have a family, a healthy family, a loving family. But I'm here to say that with Quran, with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we can have that in the 21st century, in a time that is faithless. So little people believe in God or live by that belief. Living in America here, we can have that. And so in part one, this video is going to look at how to have a stable relationship in the West when it comes to husband and wife. Number one, appreciation. Appreciate your spouse. Studies about marriages show that a large part of conflict between husband and wife is the result of lack of appreciation, or at least lack of expressing appreciation. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us, "Man lam yashkuri nas lam yashkuri Allah." Whoever isn't grateful to Allah, whoever isn't grateful to people is not grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a beautiful meaning behind this, but in the brevity of this video, I won't go into the details. But the general premise is that if we don't express appreciation to other people, it means we don't realize the good that they're providing us. And if we cannot see the good of other people, how are we going to see the blessings of Allah in our lives? And so expressing appreciation is a very integral part, not only to a stable relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also a stable relationship with the people around us, especially our spouses. So husband, when you go home and your wife has prepared a meal for you, before even eating, look at her. Look into her eyes and say, thank you. Say, Jazakillahu khayran. Kiss her hands. Express that appreciation. A wife, when your husband comes home from a long day of work, look at him. Go to the door. Give him a hug. Say, Allah ya'tik al-afiyah, for Arabic speakers, may Allah give you wellness, or whatever phrase you're accustomed to in your own language. Express that appreciation. When your husband does something, an errand, a chore, takes you out, say thank you. And just do this. It shows appreciation. It builds that stability. that what I am doing isn't going to waste. When a person is thinking, I'm cleaning the home and I'm cooking, and what's the point of all of this? Or the husband goes and says, I'm making this money and I just spend it on my family, and what's the point of all of this? As soon as you put that thank you, that jazakallahu khayran, when you use these words, it gives a purpose, a meaning for all that they're doing. And so in light of our world today, that is sucking us away from the family, sucking us away from our faith, sucking us away from social connections, showing appreciation is a huge part of building a stable family, especially between husband and wife. The second thing that we can do is patience. We know patience is a virtue. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the patient people. He's not saying this for no reason. Patience is an integral part to succeeding in anything. Do you think anyone who built a business did it without patience? Do you think anyone who got a degree did it without patience? Do you think anyone who succeeded in anything, even video games, did it without patience? And so do you think that you're going to build a family without patience? Do you think you're going to have a loving relationship with your spouse without patience? It simply doesn't fit the scheme of this world, the way Allah created this world. Patience is a virtue. And patience has endless benefits to the person. And how much we can be patient, it's limitless. And for this reason, what does Allah say about patience? إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah rewards patience with a reward that is limitless. Why? Because the amount of patience that we need to succeed in life, irrespective of what area in life, it's really limitless. And so the reward of being patient is limitless, subhanAllah. Be patient with your spouses. There are cases where a married couple were madly in love, and then they fell out of love, but they fell back into love. And there were people who started their relationship without loving each other. They hated each other. But when they took the proper steps and they were patient with each other, they fell in love after once not being in love. It happens. And so life is always up and down. Our relationships, our marital relationships are the same way. And so patience is required in order to succeed in building a stable, healthy family here in the West. The third thing that we need to do to have that stable family is learn our spouse's personality. What is the personality of your spouse? No, I'm not talking about those phony and those lame surveys that you find in tabloids and in these random news websites. That's not what I'm talking about. Actually sitting down and understanding, is my husband a talkative person or not? How does he think? How does he express himself? What is respect to him? And the same thing with my wife. What kind of a personality does my wife have? And what you will find is that there's a figure in the life of the Prophet ﷺ who has that same personality type. When you look at the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they each had their own unique, distinct personality. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was scholarly, but she was jealous. She had jealousy. Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha was confrontational. When the Prophet would speak to her, she would speak back. She was confrontational. She had that personality. She took it from her father, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha was socially intertwined. She had such powerful social relationships. She was a manager. She knew how to deal with things. And so what we find is that your spouse, women don't have all the same personalities. What kind of a personality does your spouse have? And if you want to build a stable relationship with your spouse, to build that stable family, well, you need to know how to interact with your spouse. And so look at the wives of the Prophet. Which lady, which wife does your wife most resemble? And the same thing for men. When you look at Abu Bakr and his personality versus the personality of Umar radiallahu ta'ala an versus Uthman versus Ali, they all had different personalities. And so how did the Prophet interact with each one of them? When Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he was this confrontational, this strong individual. He approached the Prophet just before accepting Islam. When the Prophet opened the door and saw Umar on the door, standing in the door, how did he react? He said, Umar, what do you want? Very strong, very confrontational. That's the language Umar radiallahu ta'ala an understands, and that's the language he likes. So understand the personality of your spouse to know how to interact with them. And last but definitely not least, conversation. We've been talking about this since the beginning of the month of this Ramadan. Conversation, conversation, conversation. Healthy relationships are built on healthy conversations, and learning how to have a conversation with someone is the biggest step, the most important step to building a healthy relationship with them. And it's even more unique when it comes to husband and wife. You see, in Islamic studies, we find that the way a woman is really receives pleasure is through the sense of hearing. She enjoys talk. When she watches a movie, she's probably, this is not all women, but generally speaking, women tend to enjoy more the conversation that are occurring. Men, on the other hand, their main sense is sight. They like to look. And so what you find is that when men watch a movie, they're kind of looking at things, hopefully looking at halal things. And they might make the conversations occurring as secondary. This is how Allah created man, how He created woman. But what you find in conversation is that it requires talking and it requires looking at each other. And so when husband and wife have a conversation, they appease their senses. The husband looks at his wife and finds the things that he's attracted to. And inshallah, she is well dressed, dressed in a way that is appealing to the husband. And so he's satisfying that thirst for visual satisfaction. And in the conversation, speaking is occurring and listening is occurring. And that appeases the hearing of the wife. And so they come together and they build love and they build stability and understanding. So many problems happen. You ask the husband, you ask the wife, well, have you told this to your spouse? No. Have you expressed this to your spouse? No. Have you asked your spouse? No. Well, how are you going to know? Never assume that your spouse knows what you want. Never assume that until you tell them. That is maturity, and that's going to happen through conversation. So, despite the difficulties of our time, despite the social disconnect that we have here in America, there are ways to work towards a strong, stable family as husband and wife in America, doing these 4 things. And we ask Allah for tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.